Next, from Springfield, state legislators and sex abuse advocates hold a press conference discussing a bill that would decrease the rape kit backlog. This runs about 25 minutes.
Today, this bill is very likely to be called in the state Senate, and I will be very proud to present it on the floor. It is essentially just an opportunity for us to ensure that justice is done here in the state of Illinois, and send a message to those, the perpetrators of sexual assault in the state of Illinois, that however long it may take, that justice will be served. I have today folks that who have contributed to the passage of this bill, not the least of which the first young lady that I'm going to introduce, Rosa Pickett, who has been the true champion of pursuing this legislation here in the General Assembly over the last several years, actually. Her story is a compelling one, and she's going to share it with you. Also, too, I'd like to recognize, and I'll call them up here each individually, but I do want to make note of them here right at the top of the conference here. State Representative Conroy, who's been the champion of this bill in the House and has made it happen this year. We passed it last year in the Senate. It languished in the House last year for reasons unknown, and perhaps she can elaborate on, but she has resurrected this bill and caused it to pass unanimously out of the House. So we're very proud of her efforts in the House of Representatives. We also have Deanne Benos from Test 400K, who's also been a champion as well, and has worked with State Representative Conroy and myself in the passage of this bill. And then Debbie Perry from the YWCA Metropolitan Chicago is here to support this. We also want to recognize Polly Poskin from the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, who are also going to become proponents for this bill as well. So it's been a collaborative effort on many fronts, and I'm so proud to join with these individuals to pass this bill here today. I'm going to introduce to you first Rosa Pickett, who will share with you her experience and perhaps the most compelling reason why we need to pass this bill. Rosa, where are you? Right behind me. There we go. Okay. By all means.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Pickett. I'm from a little town called Robbins, Illinois. I'm an advocate, and I'm a rape surviving victim. 1977, I was 17 years old. I got raped and beaten and left in Louise, unconscious, and 10 years after my rape, I didn't know the gentleman then, but 10 years later, he sought me out. He found me, and when he found me, I went running to authorities to have him arrested. But unfortunately, when I ran to them, they told me that, they asked me what year did I get raped. When he found me, okay, that happened in 1977. In 1987, he came back. And I ran to the police station to get him arrested. Unfortunately, they asked me when did the rape take place, and I told them in 1977, and they told me, well, we're going to arrest him now. Unfortunately, we'll have to release him because the statute of limitations have ran out on you. And at that time, I realized that this man just got away with raping and beating me and leaving me, you know, in Louise, you know, unconscious. And my rape kit was never processed, and unfortunately, it was destroyed some kind of way, unknown. And I'm here now to represent all the ladies, the victims. I'm advocating for the women that have been raped, the children, and hopefully that this will give other women strength to step forward and don't be afraid to have this man or persons brought to justice for the crime that's being committed. It's a very personal and sensitive crime, and a lot of women are afraid to step out because of how personal it is. But me, I feel like in order for it to be done about it, we as women's victims have to step out and try to get these people prosecuted and off the street so they won't harm other women and children. And I would like to thank you all.
Good. Well, will tell you that there's much more detail to her story, and there are, the story has been covered at length by the Chicago Tribune, Sun-Times. You can find her stories on the internet, to be sure, but very emotional and compelling reason for pursuing this legislation. And I'm going to introduce now State Representative Deb Conroy, who again has been the House champion and is primarily the reason why we're here today. I don't know that we would have been able to pass it without her efforts in the House. So, State Representative, please. Comments.
Thank you, Senator Noland, and thank you for coming today. This bill is a victims' rights bill that ensures every single survivor of sexual violence is afforded an equal opportunity to see their attackers brought to justice. As legislators, we sponsor many pieces of legislation and vote on hundreds of bills each year. And while each are important in their own way, I can tell you there are certain issues that we work on that take on a special meaning for us. For me, this was one of those. And while I am honored to be here today and to have had worked on this legislation that has taken quite a while, the bill is not about me. It's not about lawmakers. This bill is about Rosa Pickett, who is a true hero of this legislation and for all women, and too many others who share stories like her. The bill is about every single survivor of sexual assault, their families, and their loved ones who have been forced to relive their nightmare over and over again. I am so proud of Rosa for being here. She is strong, and she never gave up on this bill. Because of her, every survivor in Illinois will be able to hold on to a little more hope as they continue the healing process. Thank you, Rosa, for your strength and tenacity. It has been an honor to know you and work with you, and I cannot thank you enough for allowing me to be a small part of this.
Thank you, Representative Conroy. Next, we have with us Deanne Benos from Test 400K, true champion of not only the passage of this bill here in the state of Illinois, but across our nation, which is why we have the term 400K. We have 400,000 kits that are perhaps left untested, which only gives you an indication of how many perhaps worldwide exist, and something that I know that she is also avidly and aggressively pursuing as well, the testing of all kits in all places. So please, Deanne.
Hi, thank you, Senator, and thank you, Representative, and thank you, Rosa. I'm here representing the founders of Test 400K, which is Julie Smolyansky, the CEO of Lifeway Foods and Certified Rape Crisis Counselor, and Jason Burdine. And just as Senator Noland was mentioning his first press conference a year ago about this time was Julie's first effort. This was our first bill that she came down to Springfield to lobby on, and she regales a story about just how heartbreaking it was, and now the representative talked about that when it didn't advance as quickly as they had hoped, but how good it felt that they began to make change and how heroic Rosa was. So she regrets not being here today, but thank you, Representative Conroy, for lighting a fire in the House this year, and thank you, Senator Noland, for your leadership on behalf of Test 400K. And Rosa, I'll save one more for you. Because we're the advocacy organization, I wanted to share use this opportunity to share a few statistics, I can say that, about why this is important. Every 2 minutes, someone is sexually assaulted in this country. Yet, according to the Department of Justice, only 2 of every 100 rapists will ever serve time. Rape is one of the most underreported crimes in our nation. A shocking 68% of cases go unreported, as Rosa mentioned earlier. But even when a rape is reported, only 2% lead to arrest or prosecution. Despite this fact and how difficult it is abhorrent that our nation's law enforcement leaders have looked the other way while a backlog of at least, and we think it's more, 400,000 rape kits have been allowed to accrue and languish, or even get misplaced, as Rosa's did in police departments. Rape kits can help ensure justice for people like Rosa, who subjected herself to a 4 to 6 hour invasive, exhaustive, examination with the single hope that it would result in prosecution and accountability, and that day never came. Rape kits can prevent the next victim or life, and rape kits can ensure that dangerous sexual predators never set foot in our communities again. What is even more difficult to comprehend is that there's proof and evidence that they help increase those percentages. When New York passed comprehensive reform, their arrest rate went up from 40% to 70% for these cases. In Detroit, when they cleared their backlog, they began working on it. They had 11,000 backlogged kits. The first 2,000 were tested as of February. They identified 188 serial rapists and 945 matches in the FBI system. And they found out that because it took so much time, those rapists fled to 23 states across our country to continue their predatory behavior. So our organization, Test 400K, if I haven't clued you in, was founded on the fact that there's 400,000 rape kits. We're dedicated to building awareness and promoting reforms, which we are so proud to be a part of today. And with that, I'll just say justice delayed should never be justice denied, especially for people like Rosa. So we are very hopeful that the governor, when this lands on his desk, will sign it, and we hope that we're all back together again for that day. And in the meanwhile, we are really eager to continue working with leaders like Representative Conroy and Senator Noland on solutions to address the systemic problems that brought us here in the first place, which is the backlog, which is the systems that continue to deprioritize these kinds of crimes. And ICASA's here. They're part of a task force with the Attorney General and Cook County State's Attorney Nita Alvarez to address those solutions. So we hope that we can all work together towards them. Thank you.
Well done, Deanne. Thank you for bringing some analysis to why we need to do this. And with that, I'd also like to thank those who are here from our rape crisis centers. You know, when I first started out in public service, I actually volunteered for our local crisis center, and had unfortunately the the difficult duty of attending the emergency room in the evening with a male victim that needed advocacy, and I provided that for. But I got to tell you that it is stunning how many of these offenses, how many of these actual occurrences go unreported. And I'm hoping that with the continued vigilance that we are going to engage in here in the General Assembly, not only establishing this extra tool for lifting the statute of limitations, but also properly funding our Illinois State Police to perform the testing that's necessary, and also further legislation that may be on the horizon, allowing for testing at the hospital so that there's absolutely no backlog whatsoever. We also have Debbie Perry from the YWCA Metropolitan Chicago here, who we'd like to say a few words as well. Please.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Debbie Perry. I am the Director of Advocacy and Crisis Intervention for the YWCA Metropolitan Chicago. We are the largest provider of sexual assault services in the state of Illinois. We are one of 29 designated rape crisis centers here in Illinois. I'd like to introduce Amanda Evans, who is my volunteer trainer, Colleen Savatny, who is my coordinator of advocacy services. I have Anna Connie Barrera, who is the coordinator of the Chicago Hotline Services, and I have Anna Nelson, who does direct service. What we all share in common is we are first line when you have a victim in the emergency department. We respond to the hotline when your survivors call. We go to the hospitals, and we actually go to law enforcement agencies where they have to go and report the crime, and we go into the court system with them. We know when a person is denied justice, this has long-term health effects, both physically and emotionally. And with the passage of this bill that guarantees them the ability to bring their case forward, this will be just absolutely wonderful for those individuals and how they're going to heal in the future. And on that, I'm going to say thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, Debbie, and thank you for recognizing some of the other advocates here, the people who are actually in the trenches, every day, bringing solace and bringing comfort to people who are victims of sexual assault here in the state of Illinois. And with this, I think that there's real hope that that occurrence will lessen over time. When people realize that, justice will be served, I think that there's, of course, an incentive to not commit these crimes in the first place. And identifying the fact that, we are, because of this, we're identifying serial rapists. And that is something that I think, once is known here in the state of Illinois, that this will help reduce that 68% of those that go unreported, to be sure. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and one of the things that been disappointing to me is the fact that criminal defense bar is not necessarily in support of this, but I will tell you this, that it is the job of criminal defense attorneys and attorneys everywhere not to necessarily remove their clients from the justice that may be served, but to get at the truth, ultimately. And what this does, when we are able to analyze this evidence, we are taking a scientific approach to pursuing the truth and finding the truth. Because with DNA, it's either a hit or a miss. And it's, when it's a hit, we know that justice is about to be served. And that's the mission, I think, of the criminal justice system in general. So with that, any questions? Happy to wrap it up here for you, but go ahead. Question, please.
Talk a little bit about the reasons for the backlog, why these cases sit undetected for so long.
Sure, and I'm happy for anybody else here to join in here with me, but basically what the Illinois State Police will tell you is that we have not properly funded that division of governance here in the state of Illinois. And they would otherwise be supportive, but for the fact that they feel as though that they're now going to be burdened with having to test these kits more frequently, which will cause them to go to greater expense. But it is necessary for the public safety here in the state of Illinois. It's one of the first charges that we have. And that's ultimately the reason. We need to properly fund our state police.
How long might a typical victim wait before they find a result?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer to perhaps Deanne. Okay. Perhaps some analysis on that myself, but I'm going to let her speak more authoritatively.
So what's interesting about that is that 4 or 5 years ago now, Illinois passed comprehensive rape kit reform, one of the top 3 states in the country. With regard to that, the issue was that some of the measures, they were aggressive and it was monumental, but were subject to appropriation. So the backlog got cleared by December 2013. The state police issued a report, but then the time frame is creeping back. So my understanding, and I'm not a member of the task force, and I think there's some folks here that have that information, that was just the reason the Attorney General and ICASA and the state's attorney formed the reform task force, is that right now we've been hearing, and they're getting to the bottom of the data, that it's at least 12 months now for a victim to get a kit back, if not more. And that the backlog is, I call it like a recreep, it's creeping back again. What's good about it is that funding-wise, there are federal grant opportunities coming down the line. We'd love to be helpful to the administration in bringing those funds in, but I also understand that there's some systemic issues within the crime lab, and UIC was looking at that too, to just find out, even if they got all the money in the world, is the system working properly to make sure this never happens again, and how it can be sustainable.
I've heard, and I don't know if it's true, but I was hoping somebody could address this. I've heard that they sometimes prioritize cases based on likelihood of conviction. So if there's, for example, a prostitute who is raped, then her case goes to the back of the line because her case might be harder to prove. Is there?
Well, all such charges should be taken seriously now, and I believe that our state's attorneys do take those seriously. If a woman comes to them or comes to local law enforcement and says, hey, I have been violated, they need to pursue that case, no matter what they may believe may be her background, okay? But the you know, the fact that you have these kits sitting on the shelf for as many years as Rosa had at one time leads us to have to understand that, you know, this has been a deprioritization, okay, period, okay, that needs to be addressed and needs to be reversed. So, yeah, you know, and the prioritization, irrespective of what immediate, you know, impressions may be, is something that I think that all law enforcement through this legislation will change what they consider to be best practices. These kits will be tested, and they need to be tested right away. And with perhaps new legislation, further legislation, that indicates that, you know, DNA will be gathered and entered into a central database immediately at the hospital. That'll be an opportunity, you know. You know, whether or not they believe that there's a likelihood, I'm not sure that law officers themselves are equipped to be able to make that determination as to, particularly with respect to DNA evidence, what is good evidence, what is not, you know. But having this evidence entered into a central database is going to help resolve that. Yep.
Senator Noland,
Yes.
are there certain counties where this is a worse problem than others, or is this just a general statewide issue?
Well, certainly it's a statewide issue. My understanding is that perhaps there's been a little bit more difficulty in Cook County and surrounding suburban counties because of the sheer numbers of individuals that live there. It's more densely populated, and as a result, and Rose's story is instructive in that her community, her hometown of Robbins, had a systemic problem with regard to effective law enforcement over the course of several years. Her story was not uncommon regarding local law enforcement there carrying out their duties. As a matter of fact, Sheriff Dart had essentially taken over supervision of the department at that time when her story emerged. Her story came to light because the sheriff, to his credit, found kits sitting on the shelf down in the Robbins evidence room, and made public notice and asked people to come and to inquire as to their kits and try to identify perpetrators. And as a consequence, unfortunately, Rose's kit was never found, but others were. And so that's Robbins, that's Cook County. Whether or not it's been a real problem in Kane, Will, DuPage, Lake, I really can't tell you, but I know that, you know, if there's a corollary in those surrounding community or counties, which are not nearly as densely populated as Cook County, and then of course all the downstate counties, less so, there would be a problem throughout the state, and I believe that there has been, especially given the strain on local resources to properly fund law enforcement. And so, you know, we have to presume that it's been a problem. It continues to be a problem. If we're waiting a year for kits to be tested here throughout the state of Illinois, I think that's the consensus. Is that correct? Through the crime lab for all parts of the state, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's your answer.
And how much does it cost to process rape kits at each one?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. Please.
And it's an average of, they range from $500 to $1,500. Most people usually average $1,500 is our understanding.